Welcome to another listen of Where Silence Has Something to Say. Today we're confronting a narrative taught from pulpits and popular opinion. A narrative that has sustained traction in religious circles, although disconnected from covenant. So what's really guiding our faith? Truth, facts, law, or emotion? We'll begin with a quote from the Lincoln lawyer that helps uncover the ploy. Matthew McConaughey plays defense attorney Mickey Haller and says this: "If you've got the facts, pound the facts. If you've got the law, pound the law. And if you've got neither, pound the table." Notice, truth isn't mentioned at all, and that's the problem. If you've got nothing, pound the table with clever, emotion-driven theatrics that don't reveal truth, but distract from it. In the movie, Haller begins his legal career from the back seat of a Lincoln Town Car. And likewise, many religious preachers launch ministries from the back seat of charisma, culture, and popularity, not covenant. When you hear the word law in the Bible, what's the first thing that comes to mind? Is it legalism, bondage, or both? If so, that's pounding the table. Theatrics designed to dominate and distort through noise, manipulation, and deception. But in Hebrew, the word law is actually Torah, which means to point out, to teach, direct, inform, or instruct, not legalism or bondage. So, let's disable cruise control charisma, climb out of the back seat, and start driving with covenant as the roadmap and Torah as the path. And remember, you don't need theatrics when you have the truth. We're living in a generation where pounding the table has become a spiritual strategy. Elohim's truth is replaced by tradition, and biblical facts are buried under emotions and theatrics. And Torah, the instruction of Elohim, is dismissed as bondage or legalism. So what happens when the love for truth, facts, and law wax cold? The noise gets louder. Scoffers yell, "We're not under the law," with open contempt, as though Torah is punitive. But Scripture says it's a path. And the irony? They can't even explain which law Paul meant. Judaism knows there are many. Christianity collapsed them into one, claiming Torah is bondage and was abolished by Messiah, all while living in the very bondage it prevents. Conversely, Scripture does not describe Torah as bondage or abolished. In fact, it calls it perfect. Psalm 19 states, "The Torah of Yahweh is perfect, restoring the soul. So the next time someone confronts you with noise about the law being bondage or legalism, ask yourself, are they pounding truth or just pounding the table? Because truth, when present, doesn't need theatrics. What it does require is wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, because every translation of the ancient Hebrew Torah is more than linguistic. It is cultural, theological, and ideological. Translators inevitably import words, ideas, beliefs, and doctrines from their own culture into the translated text. And when that happens, nuance is lost, meaning is reshaped, and at best, a religious or well-educated guest fills the gap. This is how distortion takes root. In our English Bibles, the Hebrew word Torah is almost always translated as law, and this is misleading. In the Greco-Roman Western frame, the word law governs behavior through authority and domination, and is almost always punitive. Because of this framing, the word law feels like courtrooms, guilt, punishment, rigid authority, and control. It's coercive by design. It focuses on compliance and deterrence and can change depending on politics or judicial decisions. However, Torah governs identity and purpose through covenant and obedience. Different root, different aim. One forms a people, the other manages a population. With this understanding, we can see Torah isn't legalism or bondage at all. It instructs and teaches us. So when Torah is interpreted through a Western lens, it sounds like rules to earn favor, a system to escape, and a burden to be freed from. But this is not how ancient Israel, and certainly not Messiah or Paul, viewed the Torah. Paul spoke both Hebrew and Greek. His lens was always Torah. While addressing both Jew and Gentile believers in Galatia, a Greek society, he said the law was a schoolmaster, but he wasn't condemning Torah. He was describing its role. Wherefore, the law was our schoolmaster to bring us unto Messiah, that we might be justified by faith. Let's dig into that. Schoolmaster in Greek is the word paidagogos, which means tutor, instructor, guardian. So a schoolmaster is not a tyrant, but rather a tutor appointed to lead us toward maturity in faith, not to control or bind us in legalism. This confirms Torah was never the problem. The problem is and always has been sin. Torah teaches us what sin is, what righteousness looks like, and it points to Messiah who fulfills Torah, not abolishes it, by showing us how to live it in alignment. The Torah stigma is rooted in a trifecta bias. First, a translation bias, because the word law in English carries a cold, impersonal tone, and it mistranslates the word Torah. Next, a theological bias, because centuries of anti-Torah doctrine gave that mistranslation traction. And finally, a cultural bias, because Western thought treats rules as restrictions, not instructions. But Torah doesn't play by Western rules. It's anchored by covenant to instruct, protect, convict, and restore. It's how we recognize deception before it takes root. It's how we define sin before we normalize it. It's how we walk in righteousness before we drift into rebellion. Romans 7 admonishes, the Torah is holy, and the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. Therefore, Torah is a path to walk, not a burden to shun. It doesn't demand perfection, but instead trains and develops discernment. It doesn't replace grace. It is grace and reveals why it is needed. 2 Timothy 4 reminds us, for the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine. They will turn their ears away from the truth and turn aside to myths. You see, popular opinion may fill pews, but it doesn't fulfill covenant. Psalm 119 sums it all beautifully. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your Torah is truth. Torah is not bondage. It is the blueprint for living the saved life. Messiah lived it, the apostles obeyed it, and you and I are invited to walk in it. So what happens when we don't have facts or law and truth isn't even part of the equation? We pound the table. Emotion becomes evidence, anger replaces accuracy, and people defend error with volume and theatrics instead of scripture. When truth is absent, grace becomes a slogan, not a standard, preached without accountability for sin, while Torah is dismissed as bondage, and covenant violations are excused by saying, we're not under the law, but under grace. 1 John says it plainly. Everyone who practices sin also practices lawlessness. Indeed, sin is lawlessness. Lawlessness is missing the mark, missing the target, missing the goal. And that goal is Torah, Elohim's instructions for living. Make no mistake, I'm not here to scream louder. I'm here to help build solid lives in truth, facts, and Torah. I'm not here to pound the table. I'm here to invite us to rebuild the table, to come out of the system and into the scriptures where Torah is the table, not the distortion. Apostle James put it this way: the one who looks into the perfect Torah of liberty and continues in it will be blessed in what he does. So when we hear biblical disputes today, we should ask, are they contending for the faith with truth, facts, and law, or just pounding the table? And hopefully, we're not the ones pounding the table. Until next time, take a breath. Let's stop pounding the table and let our life become the table set with Torah. Don't cruise on charisma. Commit to covenant. Don't parrot opinion. Proclaim the scriptures. Don't practice sin. Walk in Torah. And there, you'll discover the difference between truth, facts, law, or just pounding the table, where silence has something to say.